Hello, and welcome to this edition of Serving Up Knowledge brought to you by QDF. I'm Gabriela Saltiel, one of the co-founders of Acting in Good Company, an organization dedicated to fostering safer learning experiences in creative institutions. Today, we will be speaking with accomplished and Quebec-based Intimacy Director Stephanie Breton about the role and importance of intimacy directors, how intimacy direction can open up and liberate the creative process, and her personal journey to this career. But first, I'd like to take a moment before we begin to talk about the land that we find ourselves on today, Tiohtià:ke, and its caretakers. We are situated on the traditional territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka that has served as the diplomatic meeting place for other Iroquoians and Algonquians, including the Algonquin Anishinaabe, Atikamekw, and Huron-Wendat. From long before my parents arrived to this country to this very day, the indigenous peoples of this land we have stewarded and sustained it. This relationship is sacred and essential to our understanding of the land and its survival, and becomes more crucial with every day that passes. I'm thankful that I can be here with you today to meet and discuss, and hope that we, as the descendants of settlers, can learn to listen so that we can continue meeting and having important conversations for years to come. Acting in a Good Company in QDF exists to support the theater community. And as we move forward with our work this year, we ask ourselves, who have our organizations historically supported? Who have we left out and why? We hope that our organizations can work together to find new ways to broaden our knowledge and scope, and to continue to include communities that have been excluded, underserved, or underrepresented. QDF and Acting in Good Company aspire to provide welcoming and safer spaces for everyone, with a focus on growth, learning, and community. To that end, QDF staff will be moderating the chat, and instances of harassment, oppressive comments, or derogatory language will be addressed accordingly by a QDF staff member and could result in removal from the virtual space. I'm so excited for this discussion today. Actually, from the moment I was asked to host, I started accumulating questions. In fact, everyone I spoke to seemed to have a question on this topic. This isn't very surprising in a time where unsafe working practices in the arts are coming to light at a more rapid rate than ever before, and the demand for safer working environments is being felt by many arts organizations and learning institutions. Intimacy directors are crucial, and their knowledge is essential in this work. So, without further ado, let me introduce our guest, Stephanie Breton. Stephanie's recent intimacy coordinating credits include the TV series Grey Mail and Three Pines, Disappointment Boulevard, Ligne de Fuite, and Let's Get Married. Since 2018, she's put in over 100 hours of training as intimacy professional for the stage with various teachers at Intimacy Directors and Coordinators, or IDC, and since 2021 with Intimacy Coordinators Canada, ICC. She is a bilingual actor who has been working for over 20 years in countless productions on screen, in theater, and in video games. She's directed over a dozen productions, both in French and English. She also has experience as a dramaturg and co-artistic director of a festival of short plays. She was also a figure skating coach and a choreographer for almost 20 years, and teaching intimacy for the stage and screen is really a passion of hers. Welcome, Stephanie, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
For those of you watching, please put any questions you may have into the comments section, and we will try to incorporate as many as we can at the end of the discussion. Okay, so Stephanie, let's start with an easy one. What is intimacy coordination?
So intimacy coordination is the term we use for any scenes of intimacy or nudity or simulated sex or hyper intimacy for film, and intimacy direction would be for the stage. So if you talk today, we're talking about theater, so that's why it is intimacy director and intimacy direction. And it really comes down to mostly unions. So on a film set, directors and, so intimacy coordinators are not part of like the Directors Guild and things like that. So it's an easy way to separate the two terms.
Nice. And what is it? What do you do? Like, what does it consist of?
Okay, so what intimacy direction is that whenever you have a scene, like I said, there would be some nudity or simulated sex, or what we call hyper intimacy. So, for example, someone who may usually wear a veil and they have to remove it. So conversations need to happen. So we are there to facilitate those things so that we're a neutral party. We get the vision from the director, ask the actors how they feel about it, make sure that everybody's on the same page. And that's a quick way of summarizing what we do. It's much more complicated than that. But we are there to make sure that these scenes are done as safely as possible.
Fascinating. So what made you want to learn about intimacy direction?
So as you mentioned in my introduction, I was a figure skater and I coached figure skating for a long time, and also been an actor for over 20 years. And I really liked both of those jobs. And then Me Too happened, and it hit home. And mostly I felt like, what can we do? What can we concretely change? Because what I kept hearing was denounce. And I thought, well, yeah, but then what? What else could we do? And then when I heard that this had been happening, intimacy direction and coordination had been around in the States, started between 2006 and 2016, I said, that's it. That's what I've been sort of doing in parallel of teaching a very high contact sport and being an actor and a director, and trying to make sure that everybody does the best that they can and they feel safe when they're doing it. So when I realized that could be a job and I could make performers feel safe doing these scenes, and also make sure that whoever's directing is getting what they want in their heads. So so just elevate the performances while still respecting what the story is what really I was like, okay, this is where all of my skills that I've been accumulating for so long can come together. I studied mime for a long time, and I really liked that form of art. And again, it's expressing certain things with the body that the audience is supposed to pick up on. And also hearing friends or just testimonies of people who had to leave the profession because of harm that had been done, that broke and still breaks my heart when I hear those stories. And so I want to make sure that never happens again, that someone wants to be an actor and only has positive experiences. And if for some reason there's a negative experience, it is not because a sexual harassment had been done. So all of those things.
Oh my gosh, my whole self is screaming amen to everything that you're saying right now. That's incredible. And honestly, it's something that like the main question that I got about this is like, how do you even gain experience? So many people that I spoke to, the first question was like, how can I be a part of this? People are attracted to this, especially people who've had experiences that have been difficult, to be diplomatic about it, in these spaces. So like, how do you study this? What resources are like even on the table for people to access this?
So you mean to like become an intimacy director specifically?
Yeah.
So the training right now is mostly coming out of the US with intimacy directors and coordinators, which used to be called IDI, Intimacy Directors International. So I started with them in 2018. And they're still sort of the most respected training company. And they do online. You can do online. They've broken down into 4 levels: level 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you can do level 1 and level 2 online now. And like in my day, we had to go in person and travel. So this has made it more accessible. I hear it's difficult to get in, but I think it is difficult, but you'll eventually get in. Is the sense I'm getting. I have friends who said, "Oh, I tried and I'm on the waiting list." Oh, yay, I got in. So there's that initial, like, you could have planned it. It's not happening when you planned. But if you really want to learn more, you can access level 1, level 2 online. Level 3 needs to be done in person. And right now, this is where, like, because of pandemic and just the rush to do this job is kind of bottlenecking. I'm with Intimacy Coordinators Canada, and we're looking to eventually bring more of that level 3 and level 4 to Canada. So, you know, I could broadly say to people, be patient, learn online what you can. There's many things to learn about this job. It's not just the specifics of being an intimacy director or coordinator. You also need things like mental health first aid and bystander knowledge, conflict resolution knowledge, anti-racism, trans advocacy. If you've never been on a film set, get on a film set. If you again, like, you know, this is why when I put in my bio, I've acted, I've directed, I've dramaturged, all those things happen, make that I understand the scope of this job. It is a big job. You need to be able to be your own department and relate to everybody else and understand their job and how it all can come together. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It really is a job that will take years. And so if anybody who is interested, be patient with yourself, be patient with the industry, and just keep learning, keep acquiring skills in ways that you probably wouldn't even think would come handy.
Right.
Because you need to also be like your own advocate for many things. What I mean is, like, if a film or a TV series calls, I have to negotiate with the producer, my salary, my time. I have to follow up on certain things like that. So that takes that kind of skills, you know. So it's just like I said, knowledge in many things to make a whole. So it's not a streamline. Everybody has different backgrounds of who they are, what they already know. So it's just a question of keep working, keep getting skills in all kinds of places that will just all come together. Anybody who has some stage management experience will understand certain things that will be needed for this job. Anyway, so that's what I would say is there's courses, yes, and IDC has the training to be specifically an intimacy director or coordinator, but they also offer just amazing webinars, like constantly on all kinds of stuff. So that would be my first place to send people to get information generally, or to specifically do this job.
Yeah, it feels like it's new enough that, like, it's sort of being built upon. It's constantly expanding its definition of what it is. Like, you touched on mental health first aid. That was a term that I only heard maybe in the last 3 years, and I went through theater school. Like, I went through it. But like, can you tell us a little bit more about that, just in particular? Because I think that's a term that not everybody understands.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I have to say something about the pandemic. We've become more aware that mental health needs care. There's a range of things that can happen to our psyche and to our mental health. And so first aid is first aid. Just like you would do a physical first aid, I have first aid, which means if someone unfortunately goes through a trauma, I can sort of patch them up kind of thing, and then send them to the proper care. Just like when I taught figure skating and someone split their chin, I could put the butterfly stitches and then send them to the hospital. But what it does do is that I do know what to do in those situations. And we are even pushing in amongst our own community is psychological health, which is preventing. So it's a fine line, and then we're still working on all of that. It is a ever evolving job that we are very conscious that we need to keep adapting with everything that's happening in the world. So yeah, being able to prevent as much as possible. So being able to read the first signs before someone goes into a panic attack, for example. What would be those signs? So you kind of touch on them on a mental health first aid, but we're looking to maybe push that. But again, it's a fine line we walk, because we don't want to be seen as the person like, we are not therapists, we are not psychologists. We just have this ability or skill that we have, but it is not our main function. And that's part of our discussions of, what we would like is for everyone around to have a mental health first aid. So that we're not just like, oh, I think this person's going to go see the intimacy coordinator director, they'll deal with you. If everybody has an awareness of what it is, then it just helps that conversation. We're all kind of speaking the same language. So it's more that we're leaning towards, is just mental health available for everyone, that everyone involved in a project should have some sort of base knowledge of what to do, what are the signs. Because as you may know or not know, it is quite broad. There's no quick fix, which is why it's difficult too, and why it goes hand in hand with something like bystander intervention. Because when someone, let's say a car hits a bike, you see the person on the ground, you're like, oh, I'm going to go to the person whose bike was just run over. But if you catch two people yelling at each other, you don't know what happened. And so most people just kind of sit back and say, I'm not going to get involved. I don't know who's right, who's wrong. So it's all of that we have to navigate as intimacy directors and coordinators, if we're on a set or in a rehearsal, trying to make sure that everybody's mental health is taken care of while still doing creative work, and that the characters are in a difficult mental space, but not the actor. And the person directing is also pushing for the character to be going through the story and not the actors. So
yes, okay, yeah, that makes it so real. Like creating the division between the actor and the character. It feels like a foreign concept with some of the things we've been taught, but it feels like also so right and safe. Okay, let's focus in on theater a little bit. So what is the process from when you get the script to when you get to rehearsal?
Okay, so when I get a script, I will read it and flag scenes that I could see as potential intimacy. For theater, it's different. Well, generally, because sometimes it's not on the paper, right? Like, I could have a director say, well, while this scene is going on, let's say there's 2 floors. While this scene is going on the bottom floor, on the top floor, I want to see them get in the room and undress. So by the time the lights come up on them, they're in bed already, and we've watched them undress. That may not be in the stage direction or in the actual script.
Right.
Or the chorus will be doing some sort of dance that might not be in the script. So I can read a script, flag scenes, but I definitely need to then either way, I have a discussion with the director and say, what's your vision? What do you want from generally the play? What do you want from each scene, each moment? How do you see this moment happening? Because we are always there to support the director's vision. I have I'm not there for my own sort of creative process. It is, what does the director want? And then I will call the actors and check in with them and say, okay, there's this scene that's happening. This is what the director's envisioning. How do you feel about the scene? Let's say there is some intimacy between 2 performers. We'll break down kissing if there is, touching. We'll talk about boundaries, which areas are for sure a no-go for touching, or maybe we can be working on. If ever it is very contradictory to the director's vision, then we go back and forth. But we usually try to find a common ground. And so by the time we show up in rehearsal, it's been talked about in safe spaces. Whenever I call an actor, I say, please make sure you're calling me from a safe and quiet place, because I will be asking them about their boundaries. I will be asking them what feels comfortable. I will be describing scenes that they will have to go into. So I want them in that moment to reflect on it and really ask themselves, do I feel comfortable doing this? Will I be able to do this? And I want to make sure I hear no's. Like if I just hear, yeah, that's cool, I'm okay, I'm going to keep digging until I finally get, well, I'm not sure about that. Then I know I've heard my first no. Because until I hear no, I'm not sure I'm getting a full picture. I will often also call I will not often. I will call costumes, check in with them, because make sure that they know what is expected, what has been envisioned. It can change, especially when theater. Like sometimes we create it on the go, but there's usually an idea, there's usually a framework that we're working within. So that's all before we get to rehearsal, ideally, or even the first read through. If I can be present during the first read through, so I can get like all the first impressions and things that are talked about, and then be scheduled in a rehearsal, just like you would rehearse a fight scene. You schedule the intimacy scenes. If there is nudity, it should be very clear on the schedule when it's happening, and it is labeled as nudity costume, and you work your way there. You don't just kind of spring it up. It is actually now in the language with equity that you need at least 48 hours advance notice. But ideally, you work backwards. And so let's say that within a week, you're going to be doing, you would like to try it with the full nudity costume, then maybe you'll work taking different layers off to get to that point. The stage manager is there and they can take notes, and us as intimacy directors, we can help choreograph the scene in the sense that we support, again, the director's vision. Some directors feel very comfortable and confident telling the actors where to touch, what it looks like. And then some others are like, I don't know, make it look good. So we will work with the actors. Again, a lot of people get scared that sort of instincts will be taken out, like, oh, it's so rigid. But we often, because it's been talked about, there's lots of freedom already, because we know, well, what do you mean we're like making out now? What we've talked about our characters. We will have table reads to talk about, like, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm jumping everywhere. Like if you would have a fight and you would tell person A to stab person B, both would turn around and say, what do you mean I'm stabbing them? Like, am I stabbing to kill them? Am I stabbing them in the heart, in the thigh? Like, what kind of, like, what am I doing? And then the other person would be like, am I resisting? Am I running away? Am I giving them a fight? Am I trying to grab the knife? You would talk about those things. It's the same conversation with a kiss or any kind of intimate moment. What do you want? What is that dynamic? And then, because it's been talked about, boundaries, for example, no touching of the neck, that we can touch hair, we can touch shoulders, then the actors have a map that we can play with. And we go, okay, this works with everything that we talked about. How does it feel? Does it support the story? Does it support the characters? And we build the choreography from there. I'm not going to show up and say, all right, here's what you're doing. You're touching here and you're touching there. And everybody's going, oh my God, I have to listen to what the intimacy director wants. We are there to help people to be as creative but safe as possible. So we will do the rehearsals. We will rehearse and help choreograph these scenes. We will make sure that they're scheduled properly. There should be also a moment once you get in this space, because let's say there's a bed. What you've been rehearsing with may not be what is actually on stage. So the choreography may change. So ideally your intimacy director is there to do any adjustment that may need be. Oh, lighting is hitting differently. Ooh, that's not what I envisioned. There should be an intimacy rehearsal, just like you would have a fight rehearsal before a show. There should be an intimacy call, and you rehearse it the same way with a quarter speed, half speed, and you can do full speed. Again, it's so that your brain knows this is a rehearsal. This is fake. This is a character that's going to go through this. And once you get there in your story, your body knows what to do, and your brain isn't going in like, wait, what are we doing right now? Are we really in love? You know, it's this is the story your character is going through. So you've worked out the movement, and then you can really dive in when the performance starts. And you're not like, oh, what was it again? Where are we touching today? It's a moment for the actors to check in with each other. How you feeling? Hey, cool, let's run it through. So not just like, hey, see you on stage. Nervous. Exactly. So it's just making it part of the story, like making it human, making it as comfortable as it can be, because we know it's not comfortable, but we'll make it as comfortable and safe. And that way the audience can receive the story, and the audience isn't going, what? Like, if you've ever watched, it's easier to see in film and TV, but you're like, something was weird about that scene. I don't know what it was. Your brain just knows you didn't believe that intimate moment. So what we want is the audience to really believe that intimate moment. And in order for the audience to believe it, it has to be safe. Not like safe, like, oh, there's nothing happening. Just the actors can really freely give themselves, and then the story will be there. So that's what we do.
It makes a ton of sense. I actually a thing that a teacher told me once that I've never forgotten is during like a scene of like violence or intimacy, you never want to be worried about the actor. If you need to worry about somebody, you need to be worried about the character. If you're worrying about the actor, the audience isn't watching anymore. I think that was a great piece of advice. So clearly having an intimacy coordinator is a really tremendous resource for performance. But like, first of all, my question is, how often are you around? Are you there for those fight calls? Like, who gets the responsibility of sort of overseeing that once you've left?
Just like you would be in a fight situation, you can name an intimacy captain. The stage manager, as usual, with any of those fight scenes, they would have the choreography written down. So an intimacy director doesn't need to be there as much as people think. Like, that's what I'm trying to get at, is people think, oh no, oh my God, there's someone else to add on board. But I mean, unless your whole play is about that, then it's definitely a collaboration. But if you just have maybe a few scenes or a few moments and they've been talked about and clarified, then like, I've come in and I've worked and done the work in 2 hours. It doesn't need to be long, because if we talk about it, everybody's clear, we do the choreography, great. Can we repeat this night after night? Well, let's do rehearsals, and like I said, you call if you need to adjust. Because a lot of our work is in prep, or just like laying foundations, just putting things in place for harm not to happen. So once all those foundations are there, then we don't need to be there. Ideally, we don't want to be there. We want you, like, we trust the production. We want them to like fly with their own wings, and so yeah. So it really depends on each. So the intimacy that you have, the needs of the actors. Again, some may need more support than others.
I was going to ask, like, what kind of tactics, like, obviously you've mentioned conversation and sort of preliminary discussions with the actors about boundaries, but how do you work with, first of all, how do you work with an actor whose boundaries have sort of been eroded by past experience? Like, how do you, like, kind of latch onto that? I know it's a really difficult question to answer because it's so individual, but like, how do you sort of sense that, and how do you try to work past it with somebody?
Yeah, it's a big question, mostly because it comes back down to knowing your own mental health, and knowing, like, you said if your boundaries have been eroded. So I would say first, as an actor or performer, check in how you're feeling before saying yes to the job. Ideally, ahead of time getting into the job that there will be those scenes. So yeah, check in with yourself. And if you say, oof, that's going to ask a lot of me, it's okay to say no. I really try to preach, it's better to walk away, say no from one contract, and then still be able to work another one, than to say yes to one and then need 6 months to recover. So, but if you're like, yeah, I feel safe, but I need to put things in place. Do you need to put some schedule in some therapy, make sure whatever you need to do to make sure those boundaries that have been, as you said, eroded, what are those, for example, triggers that may lead there? It's hard to answer this like, yeah, in a broad sense, but because it's different for everybody, but some it would be voicing to as many people as possible, or some to just keep it to yourself. Definitely, if there's an intimacy director, share with them, because we are not mind readers. We need to know, and we do not divulge things unless you say, yes, you can share this information. We keep it to ourselves, and most of the time, if there's a boundary from one performer, we just put again, this is broad, but I've put boundaries for all performers. Like, I had a situation where there was double casting, and so I was dealing with many actors for the same scene, and so I asked all of their boundaries, and it was, let's say one had, I don't want my hair touched, so I just said, we don't do no hair touching for everybody that was involved. That way it was like, no, you can't touch that person's hair, but everybody else can touch their hair, right? So that's why I'm saying share with your intimacy director, and we will work around it. And so to go back to your question, I would tell that person to check in with themselves, know what they need in order to feel their best self, to know the difference between feeling uncomfortable and unsafe. We are doing art that is asking to be uncomfortable. I mean, if you think about it, that's the stories. That's what we're doing. We need to get there. We need to be a little uncomfortable, but to know the difference between uncomfortable and unsafe. And again, if you trust that the production has things in place, if something happens, what's the dialogue? Is there a safe word? Is there resources pinned on the wall that you can have access to? Yeah, do you need therapy? Do you need to make sure you eat properly, that you work out, like all those things, you know what I mean? So I would say those are tactics, is just know what you need in order to be your best self. That way, if something happens that surprises you, you're in your healthiest ways, you're able to deal with it. And you're not going, oh my God, I already kind of showed up on crutches, and now I'm just, I don't know if I can go on with this production. So that's what I would encourage, is just to be honest with yourself as a performer, be honest with the people around you. Say no if you need to say no. I'll say no. Saying no is very liberating. And also after that, when you say yes, people receive your yes. You know, they're like, oh, they said yes. I just want to side note, because I've been asked this question, and I want to make sure, I don't know if people are listening, but no one should ask your boundaries in front of everybody. So it's okay to say, can we have this conversation in a quiet space? So your boundaries should never sort of just be shared with everyone. And I know this is hard for some people, but you don't need to explain why. You don't need to say why. You just say, I'm not as comfortable with that. I'm not as confident with that. And we grew up a lot on with the improv yes and game, which is hard. And I have the opportunity now to go into schools, and that's really my dream, is to like educate educators and students, and just to shift the game a little with no but, because that really also empowers you to say, let's say, for example, again with the neck, oh, I'm not comfortable. No, I don't love the neck, but I will be okay with the hand on the collarbone. No, I don't want to show, I don't want to do full frontal, but if I can hide and put my hands and give the illusion of doing that I feel confident with. You can just say, no, I don't want to do it, you know, always. But just saying, you don't need to say, oh, no, I don't like putting hands around my neck because this and this happened.
Right. You don't need to justify it.
You don't need to justify. No, the person, whoever you're saying no to, should be able to receive your no, and then work with that and say, oh, let's say no, I'm very ticklish, so please let's not. Or see, I even justify. No, no ribs. Oh, no ribs. What if I kind of just put my hand near there, but I don't touch it? Oh, the way you just did it, it was soft enough. It won't make me wince, but don't get too close. You know, I'm going off now, but like that kind of discussion can happen. And so the clearer you know, and those are tactics, is the clearer you know what you can, and it can change. You wake up one day and go, I'm feeling very safe with you. I know I said no ribs. Let's try that out. And you can say, I know I had said yes, but I'm not saying yes anymore. Whatever reason. Things change. That's all consent. That's a whole other webinar. But
yes.
The more you can be in touch with yourself, I guess, as a performer would be my best advice as tactic. And so for me, if I'm sitting there and as intimacy director, like I said, I want to get as much information from the performer, always within the confines of the scene. Each scene needs its own consent. So it's not just a blanket consent of like, yes, I consent to all the whole play. We will go scene by scene, moment by moment. And so I will watch the performers. If I see that there's a shift in their body language, that might be an indicator to me that they're maybe not feeling as confident anymore. And this is an example of where people question having an intimacy director when they're saying, well, I'm a director that is very comfortable with this. Everybody's comfortable around me. You're still the director. You're still the power figure. And this is often dismissed, this power dynamic, or someone is used to performing this is like, I'm very comfortable. I'm used to performing this, but you may be with someone who's never performed it. And they're scared. And they're scared because they are playing with you, who has all this confidence. They've never worked with this director, and the two of you are like buddies. And I don't really know how to say I'm saying no, and they're listening, but I'm not fully there. It's just having someone there who's neutral and really there to make sure everybody's communicating as safely as possible. So yeah, I kind of went off on that question, but I just wanted to mention, because I that's another thing that comes up often is, well, I'm comfortable with directing those scenes. You know, performers are comfortable saying no to me. Yes, but you're still the director.
That's what you.
Yeah, exactly. You know, by the time they say no and they're feeling uncomfortable, it might be too late.
Absolutely.
And we don't want that.
Oh, you just made me want to get no butt on a t-shirt so badly. Like,
that's amazing. I'm going to start some merch.
No, it's so incredible because like when you think about it, just by saying that word no, you sort of reestablish the relationship and assert yourself sort of like as an equal part of it, which is I don't want to, maybe I'm speaking for myself, but it feels like a sort of a new feeling. Theater has been so hierarchical traditionally that just by saying no, but you're sort of breaking that and sort of like reestablishing the relationship. I think that's so amazing. Anyways, okay. Next question. What do you suggest for independent companies who can't afford an intimacy coordinator? What resources do they have access to? What can they do to keep their performers safe, basically?
Okay, well, my quick answer would be don't do it. You know, like if you can't afford it, don't do it. But that, I mean, I know people don't want to hear that. But again, like if you're going to do a musical and you can't afford music or choreography, would you really do it? Would you do Peter Pan if you can't do a flying rig? Anyway, let's say you've already started or whatever. I mean, we're still available for a phone call. We can do prep on the phone, you know, try to have as a neutral party present. These scenes are there for performance. They should not be rehearsed alone, ever.
And by alone, you mean the two actors, or like the two actors and the director?
Hey, the two actors, you go work on that scene.
Oh yeah, I've heard that one before.
Right? We've all heard it. No, the point is to perform this, is to have people watch it. And again, you should have directors, stage manager, actors. There could be other people. The point is to have people watch. I mean, I love using this example. If you know Equus, you have to have nudity in Equus.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've never rehearsed the nudity with people around, then you show up opening night and there's a full packed house of 300 people and you're nude alone on that stage with the spotlight on you, your brain is not going to understand what is going on. So you need to build up to that. So what would I tell companies? Give us a call. Even if you think you can't afford it, we can figure things out. Keep your performance safe by really having an open line of dialogue, having a neutral party. The equity not in my space program is actually really great to kind of put out there those questions to make sure that those questions are asked and everybody knows. The first thing I will do in a rehearsal when I show up is to make sure that everybody knows if there is harassment, where to call, who is the person, because if something happens, the last thing you need is to like go through your email. What was that number? Where's that contact sheet? It should be posted on the walls. That should be established day one, but as often as possible. Something else that intimacy directors will do when you get into space is prepare even the front of house staff. Well, there's probably a better word, but if you're an usher and you're bringing in someone in the middle of the show and there's a scene going on that you were not briefed on and are triggered, you are all part of the same group. And so intimacy directors will anticipate that, make sure memos are put out that someone is talked to, so that usher can be like, oh, you know what? Hi, could I possibly not be bringing people in during the middle of a show? Those scenes would not be good for me to kind of walk in on, like help that dialogue. I was on a set in the fall and there was spousal abuse being depicted quite graphically. And I asked production, please release a memo, because everything that's going on in Quebec, there's, with a crew of like 100 around, someone has to be driving home after that day of work going, that was difficult for me to see all day long. So yeah, it's just, we just have our antennas out for those things that you may not be anticipating. So yeah, just be aware as a company that you hold power, whether you think you do or not. And so to make sure there is a place and a moment to have dialogue where if someone, before someone ideally feels that something has happened, but if it is, that there is a safe space to be talking about it, to really prepare those things. Like I said, if you're gonna do them, prepare them. They have to happen. And I want people to do them. And that's the thing, is that I want people to know we still should be doing them. We just need to really do them safely so that they become awesome, both for the performers to do and for the audience to watch. And I go, ooh, why are we watching this right now? This is completely inappropriate. So that's broadly what I would say. If you're still going to do it, try to have as many resources in place to keep it non-hierarchical and safe, and take time for closure also. Again, going back to mental health, that there's you don't rush out of rehearsal. Okay, we're free to go. Bye guys. That was awesome. Have a good evening. And you're like, oh my God, we just rehearsed this and I'm trying to get dressed because I got to run for my bus. Plan time at the end of your rehearsal to breathe it out, figure something out as a cast and crew group. What could be a closure that you do together, what the two performers together can do, just to, again, close off on this was work. The performers can go, thank you for the work day. I will go home now and not bring my work at home. I happened to go to work and do some nudity today, but that was work. That's what I did today. Some other days I'll be playing a waitress and I'll be, cleaning out glasses. Today I'm not playing that. It's work. Trying to trick your brain as much as possible that this is work.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. So important. I mean, personally, I work a desk job. So for the most part, I just close the door to my office and I get to end it for the day. But yeah, being in that sort of heightened state and then having to like, and then not having anything to sort of close it off, like it,
Yeah.
your body doesn't forget, right? Like,
Yeah. And something done, like it's, I love what you just said. You closed your door. So you may also, you're on purpose doing something. So it's just to purposely tell your brain, we're done. This is done. Shake hands, say goodbye. Like there's all kinds of tactics that we have, all kinds of things that we can help put in place. But if you're in a situation where you don't have an intimacy director, just have that in mind. Find ways to help with closure, to avoid all kinds of things from, your two characters, the two actors suddenly dating to, oh my God. I know, I think I see my chat popping up, but I just want to say I was on a set and there was two young performers and clearly first kiss. So that's why I was brought in, first kiss, trying to, I really had lots of prep on the phone and supporting all of that. So I went to see the moms and I said, so what's the plan for after today? And they're like, oh, we're going to go, have dinner, hang out. And I think they even mentioned like watch a movie in the hotel room. And I said, cool, sounds super fun. I suggest maybe making sure for today and maybe the next day, sometime alone, the two of them, because they've been doing this all day and their brains may not know that this was a character kissing a character. And I saw like that, the eyes of the moms going, oh my God, my 14-year-old, right, might come home with thoughts that we need to make sure are closed for the workday. Thank you very much for the workday. And we're going to go our separate ways for today. Maybe we'll hang out in a day or two to like let those totally valid and healthy emotions, feelings, they have to happen. But just to tell your brain, hey, that was fake. That was like, you lived it for real, but it's done now. You don't bring it home.
Oh, okay. With that, we are getting so many questions. So I'm going to start asking you some of the questions from our audience.
Okay, great. So I don't have to read.
So how have you navigated situations where there have been a clear disconnect between a director / creative team and their understanding of intimacy direction?
There's been a disconnect between the team and their understanding of the intimacy.
Yeah, the director or / creative team and their understanding of the intimacy direction.
So I'm not sure if I understand if there was someone doing as an intimacy director and they didn't respect that work, or if they decided to do it on their own.
I like the way I understand it is they're asking like how do you sort of like have you ever had to deal with the disconnect between the understanding of like what your work actually is and the impression that somebody has had of what the work is, and how
of course, yeah, like, oh my God, one of the first things I worked on, I asked the director, it was he wanted missionary, it was for film, but still the missionary, and I said, okay, how long? Oh, like 30 seconds. Okay, so the actors and I rehearse and we present something. I don't know, that was way too quick. I was like, okay, because there literally was 30 seconds, but that's cool. Like, what do we like? Well, let's add it. It ended up being a 2-minute, but I was there to facilitate that conversation. But I can imagine if he had have told the actors, yeah, so this will be like 30 seconds, and then they're doing their version of a 30-second, and it's like, no, again, longer, and the actors are going, oh, what the hell? This is not 30 seconds anymore. You know what I mean? But because I was there with my timer and doing the choreography and asking questions to the director saying, well, is this what you want? Oh yeah, that would be something to add. Or working with the actors, I see what, oh, they're not super comfortable or struggling with this and this. Let's sell the moment. Anyway, so a lot of times, and this comes back to the tactics that an actor can have, is ask questions. If you're feeling some kind of uncomfort, it probably is because it's not clear. So sit back down with the team, with the directors, with whoever you're having this disconnect with, and say, okay, let's go back. Let's go back to table work. What do you want to see? What do you want to happen? For how long? And try to be as specific as possible. Again, going back to like the same thing you would do if you were doing some sort of stabbing. You know, how many stabbings are we doing, for example? Like let's talk about as much as possible. And I'm pretty sure if you Google, you can find questions to ask about what specific things you need to ask. Even if you go to like the Stanislavski questions, you know, like those kinds of like, what is the context and what are we doing, and all those stuff that we learned in school or that float around. Use those, bring those into the rehearsal. If there's the trust has been broken because director or company is asking for something and performers are going, whoa, I thought I was giving you that, I'm sorry that you're not feeling it. Go back again, have a neutral party present, because emotions might show up, and emotions are beautiful and healthy, but sometimes can get in the way of having a clear conversation. The number of when I have meetings with my director, I write everything down and then I email them back and say, this is what we had as a conversation. That way I have proof. This is what we talked about. And the number of times I whipped it out on set and gone, this is what we had talked about. I also want to say nudity writers exist, not just for film, but they exist for theater. They are in the agreement. So again, if you're expected to do some nudity, whip out the writer, sit down with the production team and say, what do you expect me to show, etc. Break it down as much as possible. No vagueness. Be as specific as possible.
Got it.
So that would be my answer.
Good. Okay. That makes so much sense. Yeah. Like providing that structure, like I've heard you compare it to like fight direction several times in some ways, like providing that structure and being the person sort of safeguarding that structure so that people can play.
Like remove the emotions of like really break it down moment to moment. And I mean, I've gone through like, okay, the hands like this, close the number of times I'm on a set and I just ask one performer to close their hands. Like their hands are like this, right? Because they're a bit nervous and they're doing them. And I'm like, just close your fingers. I just close your fingers. And then all of a sudden that, it tells a whole a different story, you know? And so it's you can break it down to that specifics. Theater is rehearsal, right? And I feel like you asked that question before, or maybe we had a conversation before, like what's the difference between film and theater? And that's one thing for theater. You need to repeat it night after night after night after night. One time a night after night after night, maybe twice in a day. For film, TV, or anything filmed, it's many repetition, but within usually a same day or a same chunk of hours. So it's a different approach, and the camera comes and gets what we want to see, while the stage you have to know the wideness of your audience and all those things that you need to know. You can take the time to choreograph it more, is what I'm saying. So you need to talk about it. Yeah, you can't leave it up to chance. Well, hope it goes well tonight, good luck.
Sounds like a nightmare. Actually sounds like theater school.
Yeah.
So, okay, next question. How can this training be brought to theater schools and training institutions?
My dream. We're all working on it. And when I say we, I mean literally globally. I feel like even 2 years ago, I took a webinar from this wonderful teacher from Minnesota who was re-changing the whole theater program out there. And just, yeah, like I said, I have the opportunity. I've gone to 2 schools in Montreal to Intimacy Direct and talk with teachers. So it's on our radar. All of us who are doing this work right now, we're working. So we're trying to do this on parallel, but like I'm literally on 4 projects right now as an intimacy coordinator. And so like it just, our time is kind of divided, and it takes a long time, as you know, for institutions to see things and all that stuff, and they need grants, and I get all that. So I know I want to do it. I've worked hand in hand. I had a very successful one recently so much that the school asked me to expand it to other departments and not just the theater department. So, that gives me hope for the generations coming up, that just asking to be near someone will be part of common language. And like we talked about, saying no won't be weird. It'll be like, no, and I don't take offense to your no. Oh my God, you said no to me. You're like, okay, no, cool. I get it. So we're all working on it. I'm again, ICC, Intimacy Coordinators Canada. We have an education committee, and we're constantly putting down, trying to get into programs. I know Lindsay goes to the CFC to give training there. So it's all on our radar. And if someone has ins on institutions that would welcome us to come and talk, message me, because our team, ICCQ, which is the Intimacy Coordinators Canada Quebec. There's the three of us. The three of us love the educational part of it. We are three educators on top of this. So between the three of us, it's really what we want to do. And but we need to partner up. Like, we can't just show up and be like, hi. We need those institutions to let us in. So we're working on it. It's my goal, is my dream, to do that, to like every student coming out of a theater program knows their boundaries, knows how to say no, knows what consent is, know how to see a script, understand it. So when they get them, they show up and they have their partners and they're like, hey, checking in, these are my boundaries, cool, this is what we talked about, this is the vision. Like, it's part of it. Like, this talk becomes what's the word I'm looking for? Obsolete, because everybody knows. Like, I'm so happy, and I love talking about this. Clearly, I could talk about this for days, but I also can't wait for it to be so, like, everybody knows about this and everybody understands it. It's going to take a while. I get it. So until then, I will talk. but yeah, our dream is to get into institutions. Well, mine.
Oh my gosh, mine too. So do you find it different working with younger people, like people who are, like, for example, working in like colleges or high schools or something like that, or with teenagers in general? Like, are there major differences?
Oof. It's a good question.
Sorry.
No, 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 I don't, because I get resistance and I get acceptance at all ages and all levels. I have seasoned performers who are so welcoming and so happy this exists. Tough guys that do stunts usually, who are like, oh, I love this conversation. And then I have some who are like, no, they don't return my calls. I'm like, they sign their nudity riders without having spoken to me. Like, you don't even know what you just agreed to. Like, you're sending your writer. You're like, yes. I'm like, we didn't even talk. You don't even know what you're doing. Like, I don't need you. And it's so, a lot of times, of course, when I'm in the schools talking with the students, it's because someone's opened the door for me. So they're already welcoming me because I'm already welcomed in the space. I'm not right now going into spaces where I'm not welcomed, which is different than the work when I'm on a set where I may strongly not be welcomed. So that's different. But in an institution, of course, if I'm there, it's because someone has worked very, very hard for me to be there. So
makes so much sense. All right. The next question is, according to you, are there different perspectives about the questions surrounding intimacy in the Francophone and Anglophone theater communities?
That's a good question, because I just gave something like this not long ago to French, and I guess their biggest surprise was that this came from theater. They knew about it from film, but they didn't realize that this movement, this job, came from theater. And so I was lucky enough to speak with decision makers and artistic directors who just looked at me stunned, and because they literally said, we don't know, we know it's happening in film, but we don't know how to incorporate it in our theaters. And I said, well, it comes from theater. So go back to the roots. And they really said, yeah, I mean, that's the woman, Tonya Sina, who in 2006 wrote her thesis, because she was like, why is it when I'm asked to choreograph a fight scene, it's broken down, but when it's intimate scenes, it's go in the corner and rehearse. And she didn't understand that. So she wrote her whole university thesis on that. And she coined for the first time that we can find intimacy direction. And then she's the one who founded Intimacy Directors International with other people. But it came from her. The three women who started Intimacy Directors International were fight directors. And they were always called for violent sex scenes. And they were like, well, any scenes of intimacy should have this kind of level of discussion. And so anyway, it came from there. And that's why we always refer to like, think of the fight scenes when I go on a set, and they, stunts can have access to everything. And the doors are shut in front of me. I'm like, what? It's you feel that it wouldn't be safe if you didn't have a stunt coordinator there. Why do you expect these two performers to perform this highly sexualized scene with full nudity and have no one there to support them? To me, and obviously I'm biased, it's the same. It's health. Because it's physical health, it's easier for people to associate it. But mental health and even sexual health is something that we think about and we watch out for. We will make sure that there's no real intimacy, like it's all. That's why I keep using the word simulated. Should all be simulated. I don't anyways do the real sexual relations. There's a word missing. So is there a disconnect between the French and the English in theater? My biggest, again, broad, I would say yes. Yes, it's not there yet. Like I said, they listened to me. They seemed very enthused, but it's stayed till them listening to me. Film, I've done some French. I don't know. There's just more. I'm very lucky. I go on American sets, and so I'm more welcome because SAG performers just expect it. SAG performers, when I call them, they've worked with intimacy coordinators before. When I call someone, especially in French, here, a lot of them are like, what's your job? So it's just, I don't think it comes from, it just comes from not knowing.
Right.
So the more I can talk and have other people do work and share our work and have it highlighted that it can happen here, and it's not going to cost your production a fortune, and everybody's going to be safer, and your shots are going to look good, your film is going to be appreciated, and I have a director turn around going, oh my God, I've got shivers, this looks so good. I'm like, hey, job done. Job, is to like, you look good, like it's better than what I imagined. Awesome. And performers like, that was easy. I wasn't even nervous. Great. Everybody happy? Have a good night. Like that's what I'm there for. So
that's the ideal, really.
That's the ideal. So I think because the training is not so much available in French right now, again, something I'm working on, but I think that's where it's kind of happening right now is, yeah, they feel that they can't get trained in French. So maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
Makes sense.
As we've.
As we've, indeed. All right. How do you support actors whose boundaries have changed after scenes are rehearsed?
Same, like then you refine a choreography, you start from the beginning almost. I mean, go back to what the vision was, what was the story. If the trust was broken, then you have to work and to rebuild that trust. So go back down to what are we trying to do? And it can come down to even a trust not broken, but something like a performer shows up with a cold sore. That 10-minute thing moment needs to be adjusted. So we will put in a lot of breaths and a lot of, also before you start kissing, you should have what we put in placeholders. So it's like a hand, we can do cheek to cheek. So maybe doing that. And you know what? The audience doesn't know. They don't know. So often the changes that happen for whatever reason often look great. Sometimes I don't want to say better, but like, because I love no's. I love boundaries, because then I'm like, oh, okay, now I have to work with this. It's like, yeah, do whatever you want. I'm like, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to start. You know? So like the more you give them, also, in my experience, the more the boundaries are given and clear and respected, like because they've been talked about and listened to and taken step by step, they're not broken after. They're respected. And so there's no going back. There's no like, there's not as much of a consent withdrawal, because they felt heard, they felt respected. So, I mean, things happen. And again, this is why if you're doing theater, your stage manager should be on it to check, be like, oh, that kiss lasted a little longer tonight.
Yeah.
Flag it. Second time, let's talk about it. What happened? What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the performers literally had no idea. The one performer look at the other one and go, yeah, that's twice now. What's going on? You know, okay, let's talk about it. Let's add a rehearsal if we need to. Just like, again, if you would have a fight and all of a sudden one night, ooh, I landed funny on that one, or like I didn't grab my weapon. What happened? Let's review what did happen. Oh, the way it was placed, whatever. So if something happens, you just need to find the root of it. And again, sitting down calmly and talking about it will resolve a lot of it.
Well, related to that, our next question is, what tools do you recommend for actors and theater practitioners looking to empower or to be able to advocate for themselves in creative spaces?
What tools? Again, like, checking in with yourself. I don't know. What more can I? What's the question? What tools do you recommend to actors and theater practitioners looking to empower, be able to advocate for themselves in a creative space? Yeah, again, knowing who you are, like, especially if you have a character, be like, okay, this character does this. How would I do this? And how does the character do that? So again, to separate you, so you don't feel that you're the performer showing up and having to do this. I mean, you are, but like you're doing this as the character. So that often helps to separate this kind of like, but I wouldn't do that and I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. And you're like, this is the character doing this. Because this goes both ways. We often think of the victim,
Right.
but whoever's playing the abuser hopefully does not go around really doing this. And so they need just as much support. Like, hey, how would you tower over someone? You know, you're not like, so show me what your instincts are. No, we shouldn't never, you know, whatever. Be like, okay, so are you physically taller? Then what could we use for that? Can you puff up, bring up your arms? Like things that we can do that just like arm, how do we sell? Like if my hand is like this versus my hand like this, what talks more? So check in with your body, literally moving in front of the mirror. And then when you show up, you can be like, I feel good about this, or what tools would you recommend? Reading about the play, reading about the playwright, having discussions with the director, you know, asking questions. What do you see? What do you want in this moment? If you're with your costume, same thing. Like, can I try my costume on as quickly as possible? Like I said, if there is nudity, what do you need to feel good about performing nude? You know, some people are like, oh my God, I can't, I haven't worked out, I haven't shaved, whatever. So that's why you can't bring it up on them, because their brain is going off going, oh my God, I know, not right now. So you're like, okay, if I'm doing nudity this day, when do I need to plan my appointments, for example? I mean, it goes off on all kinds, like women who have menstrual cycles need to be thinking of those things. So again, having that discussion with costume, being like, hi, I may need some support week 2. You know, so.
Related to that, this is my question. How do you deal with an actor who, okay, like a performer who feels like they need to really focus on the script and not concern themselves with other things, that they can't, the more that they learn, the less they're in character. Sort of, I'm talking about method actors. Like, how do you deal with someone who doesn't want to know, who thinks that the best thing that they can do is only focus on the script and only work from that and not really separate themselves from the role?
Then I'd say if let's say that's not you, but you're working with someone like that, explain to them that you need these moments. For example, if it's like shaking hands at the end, doing a high five to close the scene, explain to them that this is something you need in order for the the rehearsal and the show to go well, and say, I see this is what you need, so I will give you this moment backstage, for example. But what I would need is for us to shake hands before and after the show. Please don't leave without shaking hands with me at the end of the show, for example. Like check in, and it's hard. It means you have to be very, very honest with yourself. So that's not always easy. But again, respect their work. If you want them to respect your work, respect their work. And again, empathy is something that goes a long way. If someone sees like, okay, well, this is what I need to do. No, I'm fully into character at all times, and I do this, and I take on the accent, and I walk with my limp, whatever. You say, great, that's your process. My process involves this and this, and including that in order for us, when we get to this moment where there's this intimacy between us, for me to like be as in character and with you in that moment, I need to make sure we have 10 minutes before the show to walk through it. So laying your boundaries and being firm. And again, asking for support if you need from stage manager. If stage management puts it on the schedule, there's a rehearsal there. That person can show up, do it, but they're still going to do it. And conversation to have as a company on your first read, halfway through, checking in, how are we doing? So again, it's just opening up that dialogue. And people say, oh, it takes so much time. Taking that 2 to 5 minute conversation before a rehearsal may, in the long run, be super effective than having to cancel a whole rehearsal so we can just deal with a crisis, be late starting a show one day because, one person is very struggling right now. Voice your needs as soon as possible. Know them as soon as you get the character, even before auditioning. If it's the character's written down, being like, could I do this? Could I sustain this? A month or two rehearsal, a month or two performance, for example. Can I have this inside of me for 4 months, for example? And if the answer is like, nope, then again, or if you're like, yes, but I'm gonna need to do certain things for it to go well. So,
speaking of sustainability, how would you say an intimacy director, how would hiring an intimacy director save time and money to a particular production? Or what?
Yeah, like I said, because we ask questions that often people go, oh, good questions, means that by the time you show up for rehearsal, that process has happened. There's no surprises. Our motto is no surprises, because things happen. So we try to have no surprises. So by having those conversations beforehand, having the actors think about their boundaries before they show up at rehearsal, means that they're ready for it. And we don't need to then sit there and go, what are we doing with this scene? I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. How are you guys feeling about it? Well, I've seen this done. That lengthy conversation, we've had it. We've scheduled in a meeting, and it's okay. And I often say to directors, it's okay if you don't know. Just think about it and get back to me. And often by the time we show up to rehearsal, they've thought about it. And they can be surprised. They're like, I had a director, all of the scenes, the women always ended up nude and the men always stayed fully dressed. So at the end of our 2-hour meeting, I said, okay, so in all the scenes, I just want to recap when I'm going to call them. She's always finishing nude and they're always finishing fully dressed. He's like, yeah, that's how I'm doing it. So, okay. He's like, what? I said, no, I'm just confirming. I got some rewrites and some notes, and it was a little bit more equal. And, you know, again, I was like, that's your creative freedom all there, but just think about it, because it's, again, okay, but something to think about before we even showed up and started shooting and rehearsing and all that stuff. So it's not something that after a while you're like, oh, you know what, this is the third scene we've done and it's been the same. Maybe we should have thought about that before. Another concrete example of time saved and money on a film set. They wanted them nude in herbe longue, so I guess high grass, and it was supposed to shoot at night on the 18th of October. Now think of Quebec, 18th of October at night, to be nude in the grass, right? So I told them, I said, just think about it, but they moved it to, they had no choice. We were shooting in October. They moved it to the 4th of October. They had heating blankets with dead leaves on it. And they said, see, we listened to you. So all of that saved that the actors weren't freezing. We didn't have to put them in a heating room, reheat them in between each takes, blah, 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 figure out how we're going to see through the grass. I flagged all of that in our initial conversation way back in July. So when they made their schedule, they scheduled it in a way that was going to be effective. And I had a great conversation with the director. So what do you want for this scene? He's like, I really don't know. I was like, okay, well, look at the other scenes. This is what's happening. This is the story. What about this? What about that? By the time we showed up, he knew what he wanted with his camera work and everything. So same thing can happen for the stage, where we ask questions and we get the wheels going. So by the time you show up, your rehearsal goes so much quicker. It goes so much quicker. That's choreography we keep talking about, because boundaries have been talked about and everything. You try it out and it flows and you're like, well, I felt really good. That's the story I'm saying. Then again, like, we're adjusting hands, we're adjusting breaths. It's mostly there because the nervousness and the fears and the questions we had have been answered. They've been talked about. So that's how you save time and money, is by having someone there to ask those questions, to make sure things don't fall in between the cracks too. Like I mentioned, we will follow up with costume. So if costume needs to go, so what's happening with this scene? You're like, well, we've tried this. Okay, do you want to try it with this kind of dress? And go, wow, this doesn't fit. This doesn't move the way we expected it. We will call it, okay, you know what? We've just put in quite a lot of tumbling in the bed. So can we make sure we get something that really holds the bits in places? Great,
Right.
we'll get on that, for example. So we're there. A lot of people say, well, I was already doing that job. Sure. But a lot of times people are like, is it my job to speak up right now? I'm not sure. It is our job. It is our job to check with all of those. I'm on a set in the next few days and it's all happening in bathrooms. So I've checked in with props, hot water, towels, etc. Checking with costumes. We have this, checking with the actors, checking with the directors, checking with the producers, close set protocols. All of that has all been condensed. It's been 2 weeks of prep. By the time I show up tomorrow, it'll be like, we've already talked about all this. Let's shoot. Then, it's not like, well, what kind of towel do you want? What are we seeing in the shower? How long are you in there for? What do we want in the scene? So it's that. So that 1 day prep that you feel is expensive, maybe because you're paying us for that 1 day where you don't really see us. We are working. So by the time that we all show up and meet in person, everybody's already has an idea of what is happening. So.
Great. Okay, we have one last question. I know you've already said this, but I think it's really important to sort of end on this note. What are your hopes for the evolution of intimacy direction?
That it becomes common practice, that that an intimacy director coordinator is automatically part of the crew, for lack of a better general term. I tell people to budget for it ahead of time. So people are now asking for grants right away. And I even have some people who've asked for grants for me to help them in the writing of their project. So that is my hope for the future, is that it becomes part of, that we don't remember how we worked with that one before. That everybody is ready to share boundaries and work together and understand that this is to make those scenes awesome and not to stifle the work.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. Like, honestly, this has been such an incredible conversation. I feel like I've learned so much, and I work in theater every single day. And yeah, like I hope that you just like go for it and continue this incredibly important work. I'm excited for you to bring intimacy coordination training to Canada when it happens.
Well, in Quebec, it's happening in Canada, but yes, but in Quebec, yeah.
Yeah, it's in Quebec. Always the caveat. And yes, and so I thank you for being here. Thank you everybody for watching. And on behalf of HC and QDF, I just want to say thank you. And we will see you next time. I'm going to hand it off to Anna now from QDF to take us into the next section.
Hi, thank you so much, Gabriela. Thank you, Stephanie. On behalf of everyone at QDF, we are so thankful that you have shared your experiences and your knowledge with us tonight. Before we sign off officially tonight, I'm just taking a moment to do some thank yous. I just first want to thank everyone from the QDF staff and board, our QDF members, CAM, Kelk, and Canadian Heritage for their support. And of course, a really massive thank you to Acting in Good Company for being a partner with today's event. And thank you again, Stephanie and Gabriela. And we have a fantastic virtual stage manager behind the scenes tonight, Heather Ellen. I just wanted to give everyone a little heads up that we have more events coming in the pipeline at QDF. So you do need to be a QDF member to get the latest QDF news right in your inbox. And if you do want to become a QDF member, the staff is putting the link for that in the chat. And our next event is called Tax Prep for Theater Practitioners. This is happening in February. You can sign up with the link right there. We want to make sure you're getting your taxes done, doing them right, and not stressy. We do have some questions tonight about resources, further education for intimacy coordination and direction. We are going to have a section on our website on our resources page with some further resources there. Other than this, if you do want to learn more about QDF and how we can support you or support the English theater community, you can join me every Monday for a Membership Monday, which is a one-on-one chat on Zoom. I'm wishing everyone a really lovely and safe evening, and I hope everyone has a very happy Lunar New Year. Stay safe and stay well. See you soon. Bye.